All right, hello everyone. Let's jump right into it. Today we're tackling Unit 1, the process of communication. And honestly, this is such a core topic. I mean, think about it. We communicate all day, every day. But really understanding how it all works, that's the secret sauce that can take you from just talking to being a truly great communicator. Okay, let me ask you something. Have you ever sent a text or maybe said something out loud and it just got completely misunderstood? We've all been there, right? That frustrating moment when what you meant to say and what the other person heard are two totally different things. Well, that gap, that's exactly what we're going to dig into today. You see, a lot of people think communication is just talking, just throwing information out there. But it's so much more than that. It's really about creating a shared meaning between people. And here's the best part. It's not some magic power you're either born with or you're not. Nope. Communication is a skill. And like any skill, you can practice it, you can get better at it, and we're going to break down exactly how. All right, so first things first, if we're going to master this skill, we need to be on the same page about what it even is. So what is communication, really? Well, at its most basic level, it's an exchange. But it's not like trading cards, where you just swap one piece of information for another. It's way deeper. It's about connecting with people. It's about sharing ideas, solving problems together. Pretty much every time you interact with someone, whether you're chatting face-to-face or even just reading a book, you're part of this amazing process. Okay, so now let's get into the nitty-gritty. Let's look at the actual mechanics of how this all works. To really get good at this, you gotta understand the blueprint, right? It's kind of like popping the hood of a car to see how all the parts work together. All right, take a look at this. This model is basically a roadmap for any communication ever. I know it might look a little technical at first glance, but I promise it's super simple when you break it down. We're going to walk through each piece of this puzzle. So let's use a super simple everyday example. Let's say you want to ask a friend to get coffee. It all starts with you, the sender. You have an idea. Then you encode that idea into a message. You type out the words, "want to grab coffee." That message travels through a channel, which is your phone. Your friend, the receiver, gets the message. They then have to decode it, which just means they read and understand it. And finally, hopefully, they give you some feedback, like texting back, "Yes, I'd love to." But we all know conversations don't always go that perfectly, right? What happens when something gets in the way? Well, that's where this sneaky thing called noise comes in. And noise doesn't just mean actual sounds. It's anything that messes with the message. It could be a bad phone connection, sure. But it could also be that you're super tired and just not paying attention. This noise can pop up at any step of the process and throw a wrench in the works. And that idea of noise is really just one example of a much bigger problem: barriers to communication. So let's take a closer look at some of the common things that can go wrong. You know what the truth is? Communication is pretty much never 100% perfect. And these barriers are the reason why. There's always a chance for a little mix-up. But here's the important part. You don't have to be a victim of these barriers. Just knowing that they exist is half the battle. So what are some of these barriers? Well, one big one is code. That's just the language you're speaking. Pretty obvious, right? If you speak English and I speak French, we're going to have a problem. Another one is vocabulary. Ever had a doctor or a mechanic use a bunch of technical jargon you didn't understand? That's a vocabulary barrier. Then you've got complex concepts and a really big one, culture. Different cultures can have totally different assumptions about what's polite or what's normal. And it's not just about words. Your physical environment can be a barrier. I mean, try having a heart-to-heart conversation at a loud concert. It's not going to work. But maybe the most powerful barrier, and one we often forget, is what's going on inside our own heads. They're called affective factors, basically your emotions. If you're stressed out, angry, or you just don't trust the other person, it puts up a huge wall that makes real communication almost impossible. Okay, so we've looked at the process and we've looked at what can go wrong. Now let's switch gears and talk about the different tools we have at our disposal. Our communication toolkit, if you will. And we have a ton of tools. First, there's verbal communication, which is just using words. That can be oral, speaking, or it can be written. But then there's the big one, nonverbal communication. Your body language, your gestures, your facial expressions. Sometimes that stuff speaks way louder than words. And of course, we use visuals, things like charts and pictures to get a point across fast. Now, a big choice we're always making is whether to write something down or just say it out loud, right? So written communication is awesome for a few things. It's great when you need a permanent record or when you're explaining something really complex. The only con is that feedback can take a while. Oral communication, or speaking, is the opposite. It's super fast, you get immediate feedback, and you can use your tone of voice to really get your point across. But it's not permanent. And this stuff really matters in places like work or school. In any organization, you've got two main types of communication. There's formal communication, which follows the official rules, like your boss sending out a memo, and then there's informal communication, just chatting with your coworkers. And this communication flows in different directions. When a boss talks to an employee, that's downward. When you give a report to your boss, that's upward. And when you're just talking to a coworker at the same level as you, that's horizontal. All right, let's zoom in even closer now. Let's talk about the thing we do most, just having a conversation. And here's something that might surprise you. Even the most random, casual chat actually follows a hidden set of rules. Rules that most of us follow without even realizing it. So, a philosopher named Paul Grice came up with this idea called the cooperative principle. It sounds fancy, but it's really simple. It just means that when we talk to someone, we assume they're trying to be helpful and cooperative. And to make that work, we follow 4 basic rules. Quantity, give just the right amount of information. Quality, don't lie. Relation, stay relevant to the topic. And manner, just be clear and make sense. Simple, right? Another one of these hidden rules is something called adjacency pairs. Again, sounds complicated, but it's not. It just means that a lot of conversation is like a game of catch. One person says something that expects a certain kind of response. It's like a call and response, or a conversational handshake. Let me give you some dead simple examples. If I ask a question, you expect an answer. If I say hi, you expect a hi back. If I say I'm sorry, you expect something like it's okay. See? Question, answer. Greeting, greeting. Apology, acceptance. These little pairs are the basic building blocks that keep our conversations from falling apart. Whew, okay, that was a ton of information, I know, but you made it. So before we wrap up, let's do a super quick summary of the key takeaways from this chapter, just to lock it all in. All right, here are the big things to remember. First, communication is a process. It has steps: sender, message, receiver. Second, noise and other barriers can get in the way, things like language, culture, or even just being in a bad mood. Third, we have different tools in our toolbox: oral, written, formal, informal. And fourth, even a simple chat has unwritten rules, like those maxims and adjacency pairs we talked about. And that's pretty much it for this unit. But I want to leave you with one final thought to chew on. Now that you understand how it all works, the process, the barriers, the rules, I want you to think, what is the single biggest communication barrier you face in your own life? Really think about it, because just identifying it is the very first step toward breaking it down and becoming a way more powerful communicator. I really hope breaking it down this way was helpful for you. For more clear explanations and daily IGNOU videos, subscribe to IGNOU Mind Decoded.